Thank you very much for being here. We are going to speak about how blockchain can be a game changer for your business. And so we are going to speak a bit high level, what is blockchain in case you need to learn what is a blockchain. I believe probably most of you already heard or already know something about blockchain technologies. We are going to speak also about how to decide and the decision path to understand if blockchain is a good technology or not for your business. And then we are also going to talk about different use cases for blockchain. At the moment, there are probably thousands of different possible use cases. Many companies are already using, many different businesses already using blockchain. But we are going to speak also about some interesting and more mainstream use cases. Meanwhile, if you use LinkedIn, you can search for my name on LinkedIn and connect and ask any question. This webinar is provided by Knowledgehut. Knowledgehut also provides many other different courses online and offline. And we are also organizing on the 3rd of December, I think, a blockchain course in Hong Kong. It's 8 hours training. If you are in Hong Kong, it will be great to have you in this course. You can search on the website, Knowledgehut's website, for blockchain 101, and you have there the schedule in Hong Kong, December 3rd. Okay, I think we should start. We are going to speak about what value the blockchain can bring to your business, understand what is a blockchain and benefits of blockchain for business, different types of blockchain that can be used, and we are going then to focus more in one of the types of blockchains. We are going to speak a bit also about Hyperledger, because for corporate enterprise solution is one solution that has many different use cases. So what is blockchain for? So basically, the blockchain allows to record the state and ownership of an asset. And asset may be basically anything. Any kind of asset can be recorded on the blockchain or tokenized. The blockchain enables parties that not trust each other to transact and removes the trust issue between different parties or conflicts of interest, because all the parties need to engage in the same rules of the blockchain. We are going to speak about this ahead. And allows also to have automate contractual agreements between parties. And we are also going to approach this part. Is called smart contracts, and any kind of contract between parties can be put also on the blockchain. A small description of what is a blockchain. Basically, you have here 3 different descriptions. A blockchain is a shared ledger that everyone trusts to be accurate forever. The blockchain is like a huge global decentralized spreadsheet. And according to Wikipedia, an open distributed ledger that can record transactions between 2 parties efficiently and have a verifiable and permanent, in a verifiable and permanent way. But the main thing is that the blockchain is basically a decentralized ledger, so a decentralized database, distributed database that allows every party to have access to the same database, to the same ledger, and a single source of truth. The blockchain has different components: a ledger, assets, a business network, so different parties that are interested in participating in this blockchain, and some characteristics like consensus, provenance, immutability, and finality. We are going to speak about this. So, but basically, what is a ledger? So we have traditional ledgers, right? Everyone will use, like, for example, Excel spreadsheets. For thousands of years, people use some kind of ledger to record transactions between parties, who bought what, who sold, ownership of things and assets, as well as debt, everything. Now imagine that a blockchain is basically, you can see a blockchain has an Excel spreadsheet, but where you can only add new lines to this spreadsheet. You cannot change previous lines. You can only add new lines to the spreadsheet. And that's why we say that blockchains are appended only, because you can only add new information. You cannot change previous information. What is an asset that can be on a blockchain? Basically, everything. We have tangible and intangible assets, like real estate, are different projects that are already tokenizing and putting the records of property on the blockchain. There are also real estate REITs, real estate investment trust funds that are tokenizing, and you can trade these funds on the blockchain. And you also have intangible assets that can be recorded on the blockchain, like a mortgage, a warranty, financial products. You have intangible assets like financial products, intellectual property, digital property, and also cash. Everybody heard also already about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, all this stuff. And probably the first use case for the blockchain was Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin was the first in 2009 blockchain to exist. But Bitcoin only allows transactions between parties, transferring kind of cash, right? Is kind of digital money. But Bitcoin have a very limited use case. You can only do transactions and transfer value between people. And the Bitcoin blockchain keeps all the transactions, all the record of the transactions. However, there are thousands of different use cases for businesses, and that's what we are going to talk now. So there are 4 attributes that make a blockchain a blockchain. We have the consensus, which means that all the parties in the business network, all the actors in the blockchain agree on the kind of information that is put on the blockchain. So for example, if we have a blockchain to track the supply chain of milk, every party agreed that you cannot record on that blockchain potatoes, because the record of the blockchain aims to only record milk, for example. And also the consensus means that all the actors, all the nodes on the blockchain, so the computers that are running the network, also agree on the rules of the network. Have provenance, which means that parties are able to trace records, trace back all the transactions, and which means that if an organization or a person join a blockchain, you can trace back and audit back all the transactions on that blockchain. Immutability, all the records in the blockchain cannot be altered or removed. You can only add new records. And finality, once a transaction is committed to the blockchain, there is no rolling back. You cannot erase that transaction. Eventually, you can only add new transactions. We have here a very interesting use case for corporates. So basically, this is the current view of a traditional business, the car manufacturer business, for example. And what happens in the current world is that each of these actors, the manufacturer, the dealership, the lease company, the lessee, the regulator, and the scrap merchants, each one of them have their own ledger. So each one of them is keeping their own records, and they need to share information between each one of them, but sometimes they don't trust each other 100%. They have sometimes some kind of conflict of interest, and this is inefficient and expensive and vulnerable to errors, and a ton of things can go wrong here because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ledgers for the same asset, right? And each one of these actors are keeping a different ledger. Now imagine that instead of 6 different ledgers, we have a single ledger that is shared, replicated, and permissioned among all these nodes, among all these actors. So in the blockchain, and you see here the difference, instead of having all the paperwork going back and forth between all these people, you have a single ledger that is shared across all the people, all the actors. And when you architect a blockchain solution for a business or for organizations, it is possible to put different degrees of permission in a blockchain. For example, the manufacturer, in this case, can record a new car on the blockchain. The dealership can write on the blockchain that he bought and sold the car. The regulator cannot write, can only see, for example, and audit the blockchain. So we can, in the blockchain, have a fully transparent, shared and replicated ledger. Another interesting use case are the global payments. So we know that at the moment, if I want to make a transfer from India to Hong Kong, from Hong Kong to Europe, sometimes it takes several days, and banks still using very old ways to do this. The software that banks are using to make this kind of transaction is already 20 years old. And we know that sometimes things go wrong. Banks don't have the correspondent bank in the other country, and sometimes it may get a bit messy and slow to make a transfer between countries, between banks. And also banks take high fees for transferring money. Now, imagine that instead of having this middleman, the bank, you can transfer value on the blockchain, and everyone has a single ledger and is way faster to transact on the blockchain. Let's say I can, in this case, make a transfer using Bitcoin or Ripple. Banks are already using a lot of Ripple, which is one of the blockchains, existing blockchains that banks are using already to make transfers between them or between people, and it's much faster and cheaper, and removes the trust issue, because in the current world we need to trust a central authority, but because the blockchain have these characteristics, the cryptography, the consensus, and everyone agrees on the state of the blockchain, you can transact on the blockchain and trust on the transaction this way. Just a small approach here. Usually people say that blockchain is decentralized. The correct word is distributed. Distributed is a bit more than centralized. Decentralized, you have nodes that control small portions of the network. And in a distributed network, if one of the nodes of the network fails, the rest of the network is not compromised. So we already said that a blockchain is appended only, so you can only insert new records on the blockchain. Is a shared ledger. You can build smart contracts, so you can embed business terms on the blockchain. I can say, for example, that this day I want to pay to that person this amount, or I can say, for example, I'm a supplier and I have a buyer that is in a different country that is going to buy me shoes, and I can demand the buyer to make a transfer to a smart contract, and the payment is locked in a smart contract, and according to the rules of the smart contract, the payment is unlocked only when the goods arrive to the buyer, for example. There's privacy, because you can set different permissions and The cryptography features also allow very high level of privacy and the trust. But the main benefits of a blockchain is the fact that it saves time most of the times, not always, but most of the time saves time, remove costs because we are removing the middleman and also having a distributed ledger for everyone, and reduce risks regarding fraud, tampering, and we are going to see some use cases, some examples here. Now, to decide if a blockchain is a good solution or not to your business, you should take a look at the blockchain decision path. Many projects and companies are adopting or trying to adopt blockchain because of the hype, because it's a hot word, but sometimes businesses and people don't understand if really the blockchain is really useful or not for their business. Because if the business doesn't need a distributed database, you don't need a blockchain. A small company without any need to have a decentralized database don't need a blockchain. But basically, we can ask some questions. Do your business need a shared common database? If yes, good. If no, if you don't need a shared common database, a shared database among other people, other participants, you don't need a blockchain. If yes, there are multiple parties involved. So multiple parties, different people, different organizations, or not? If yes, parties involved have conflicting incentives or are not trusted. Because if everyone totally agrees, we don't need really the blockchain. The blockchain comes to remove the trust issue. The rules governing participants are uniform, because everyone needs to agree on the rules of the blockchain, because once you deploy a blockchain, everyone is supposed to play with the same rules. Do you need an objective, immutable log? Because the point is also that if you need a system, a database where you are allowed to change or erase previous records, a blockchain is not a good solution. In the blockchain, you can only add new information, and the information that is added in the past is immutable. For example, there are some issues regarding the GDPR in Europe. Right, GDPR demands that users are allowed to demand to delete their data, their personal data, and the blockchain is going to keep forever the data. So, and if the answer is yes, the rules of the blockchain do not change frequently. To change the rules on the blockchain may be expensive because there are developers, programmers involved. You need to rewrite the rules of the blockchain on smart contracts. So if this is a business where you have new rules frequently, maybe the blockchain is not the best solution. But if you have, or you plan to have the same rules over a long period of time, the blockchain may be a good solution. And are the transactions public? And this question leads not to yes or no, the blockchain is required, but yes or no, public blockchain or permissioned blockchain. Let's say, for example, you have a blockchain, for example, where you want everyone to see everything. A public blockchain may be a good solution. If not, a permissioned blockchain is the best solution. The permissioned blockchain, also called private blockchain, allows you to set different permissions and to allow, for example, only certain people to interact or have transactions or see the blockchain. And so some differences here between the public, private, and permissionless or permissionless blockchain. We have permissionless public blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum that are completely open and any person can participate and see. Permissionless blockchains like public pools. Permissioned public blockchains, some land titles, university degrees, where only certain people can record new transactions, but everyone can see. From that point of view, is public, or permissioned private, like blockchains that manage medical records. So only certain people can see the medical records, and only certain people can write medical records. Regarding private blockchains, which are the most common enterprise solutions, we have the most common Hyperledger. Hyperledger have a different tool set, different work frames that allow financial products, banking, supply chain, a ton of different uses. Multi-chain and Art Record and Quorum are also other private blockchains, especially directed for financial services and also other uses. But I'm going to focus a bit more on the Hyperledger. Hyperledger is an open source collaborative effort. More than 500 software engineers have contributed to the Hyperledger code. It's hosted by the Linux Foundation, and it's a global collaboration between banks, IoT, supply chains, healthcare, manufacturing, technology, and much more. There are more than 240 Hyperledger members. These are companies that are already using or developed or contributed to the Hyperledger projects. As you can see, we have here big companies as Centieiro, Airbus, American Express, Baidu, Cisco, IBM, JP Morgan, a ton of different companies. And a bit more detailed here, as you can see, you can identify many big companies all across the world are using or developing on blockchain. And on blockchain Hyperledger in this case. So, and basically, Hyperledger is a network of ledgers, right? You have different organizations that may be interested. The most common, we have financial services, supply chain, healthcare, and we are going also to go deep a bit more here. But many different industries, as you can see here, may use blockchains or Hyperledger to streamline payments, record transactions, record property, assets, or simply to have a distributed ledger across different sectors. Giving here some examples, cross-border payments, SWIFT, for example, is already using Hyperledger, and Hyperledger enables real-time visibility on the liquidity of Nostro and Vostro accounts, easing reconciliation between banks and allowing much more liquidity between banks and removing the trust issue. So, global trade finance. WeTrade, for example, is a project that includes different banks like Deutsche Bank, HSBC, KBC, Rabobank, Societe Generale, Santander. So different banks are using this trade finance platform that allows the banks to track real time and exchange information regarding their clients that are buying and selling across different countries in the world. And trade finance is a very interesting use case because until now, this is a very heavy in terms of paperwork, and the blockchain comes to solve this. Diamond supply chain. Hyperledger is a project that is tracking the supply chain of diamonds since the mine, who found that diamond, who bought, who sold, and this comes to solve the black market of diamonds and blood diamonds. So basically, Hyperledger comes to solve a lot of problems in the diamond market and make sure that the person that found the diamond also have the fair payment for that diamond. And all the certificates, the Kimberley certificate is recorded on the blockchain. Seafood tracking. Intel have developed using Hyperledger sources a project that aims to track the supply chain of tuna. And basically, since the place where the tuna is caged, the temperature of the tuna, the location of the tuna, when the tuna went to the port, the wholesaler, the retailer, everything is recorded on the blockchain, and the final user user or the retailer can have access to the records and see exactly when the tuna was caught, if it was caught recently, the temperature. So everything is fully transparent on the blockchain. Music and media rights. Blockchain Media is also a platform that is allowing to have a more transparent content rights registry and make sure that musicians have the fair share of their payments regarding the copyrights. KYC and ID. Different projects are already putting the ID of people on the blockchain. For example, the Dubai government, UAE, is already, the driver's license is already on the blockchain. There are different countries that are putting the personal ID of the people on the blockchain. So basically, any person, instead of using the ID card, you can share your key to a bank, for example, to have access to your ID. And this is quite interesting, for example, because you know that every time you go to a bank to open a bank account, you need to share the information, fill the forms, give your ID card, passport, proof of address, employment contract, all this stuff. What if this is recorded already on the blockchain? Your personal information is on the blockchain, and once you go through the KYC and submit your documentation, you can share this information with different banks, and you don't need to submit all the information again and again and again. So putting things together, there are two. We have these two different ledgers, right? The distributed ledger, the blockchain, and the centralized database. And basically, as we saw, a distributed ledger, we have the consensus on the data, is dependent only, so you can only add new information, is distributed across different nodes, across the network, is decentralized because you don't have a single point of failure, it's peer-to-peer, there is a cryptographic verification, cryptographic authentication and authorization, and there is a high level of resiliency that increases with node count. And this resiliency also allows, for example, to have 100% uptime on the network, which is quite different comparing with the traditional centralized database, where it is requires internal and external reconciliation, there are no restrictions, there is a single point of failure, a single point of control, many gateways and middlemen, and the cryptography is added after. Actions must be completed on behalf of the others, and backups must be only manually. So, as you can see, there are many different use cases for blockchain. We could speak for hours on different use cases and how to apply blockchain for business. And I hope we can organize more webinars in the future. Yeah, I hope to see you soon again. And if you are interested, please take a look at Knowledgehut website to different courses. Knowledgehut provide different blockchain courses and also other areas. You can also check me on LinkedIn, drop me a message. And yeah, guys, thank you very much.